Most locomotives get 30 good years, then a torch cuts them to scrap, but a few refused. One survived a crash straight through a station floor. One was pulled from a museum and fired back to life after 58 years cold. One still hauls coal in Bosnia 80 years after the war that built it, and one has been running since 1855. These are 10 machines that engineers gave up on, and that simply would not die. Number 10. The British Rail Class 08. Let's start with the underdog, a squat little shunter that was never meant to be a legend. The British Rail Class 08 is a 350 horsepower, 060 diesel-electric shunting locomotive, powered by an English electric 6 kT engine. Nothing about it screams glamour. It trundles around freight yards at walking pace, coupling wagons together, and yet it may be the most quietly indestructible locomotive Britain ever built. Here's the number that matters. 996 of them were constructed between 1952 and 1962, spread across 5 British Railways works: Crewe, Darlington, Derby, Doncaster and Harwich. That makes the Class 08 the most numerous locomotive class in British history. The pioneer machine, number 13,000, was built in 1952 and entered service in 1953. Now think about what's happened to British Railways since then. Steam was wiped out. Whole fleets of glamorous express diesels were designed, celebrated and scrapped. The nature of freight changed completely. Trains became fixed rakes of wagons that don't need shunting the way they used to. By rights, the humble 08 should have vanished decades ago. It didn't. Its secret is almost embarrassingly simple. The English electric engine is rugged, easy to maintain, and there are spare parts everywhere. Unlike a steam engine, there's no fire to light and no hour-long wait to build pressure. You climb in and go. So while the stars burned out, the 08 just kept working. In 2026, more than 70 years after that first unit rolled out, dozens of Class 08s are still earning their keep in mainline service, with around 87 more preserved on heritage railways. The very first one built, 13,000, survives too. It's the locomotive equivalent of the office chair that outlasts every trendy piece of furniture in the building. Plain, reliable, and absolutely refusing to retire. Number 9. The British Rail Class 37, staying in Britain but moving up to something with real muscle and a real voice. The Class 37, officially the English Electric Type 3, is a 1,750 horsepower Cocoa diesel electric built between 1960 and 1965. Enthusiasts nicknamed it the Tractor for its brute pulling ability, and the Growler for the unmistakable turbocharged roar of its 12 CSVT engine. Once you've heard one work hard up a grade, you never forget it. English Electric built 309 of them at the Vulcan Foundry and at Robert Stephenson and Hawthorne's. Interestingly, there was never a prototype. British Rail was confident enough in the proven engineering of the earlier Class 40 that they simply ordered the 37 straight into production as part of the great modernization drive that swept steam off the network. And that versatility is exactly why it wouldn't die. The Class 37 could go almost anywhere. It was light enough on its axles to work secondary lines with weight restrictions, like the wild and remote West Highland Line in Scotland, yet strong enough to drag heavy freight. When newer, more powerful freight diesels like the Class 60 and Class 66 arrived in the 1990s and started pushing the 37 aside, the class didn't disappear. It scattered into the hands of operator after operator who still found work for it. Direct rail services used them for the delicate low-speed job of hauling nuclear flask trains. Colas Rail and Network Rail put them on infrastructure and inspection trains. West Coast Railways ran them on charters. Over the decades, they were rebuilt and re-engineered into a whole family of subclasses. The result? In 2026, around 40 of these locomotives, designs first drawn up before the Beatles had a record deal, are still certified for mainline running, alongside dozens more preserved. 65 years of continuous service is a staggering figure for any diesel, and the Growler is still out there, still roaring. Number 8. The EMD SD40-2 crossed the Atlantic now for a locomotive so successful that in North America you barely need to visit a museum to see one. You can just stand by a mainline and wait. The EMD SD40-2 is a 3,000 horsepower, 6-axle diesel electric powered by a 16-cylinder 645 engine, and it is very possibly the most successful diesel locomotive ever built. EMD produced it from 1972 to 1989, and more than 4,000 rolled out of the factory, with over 1,000 more closely related variants on top of that. When EMD launched its -2 line, the company actually expected its higher horsepower SD40-2 to be the big seller. They were wrong. Railroads had learned a hard lesson in the 1960s horsepower race. More power meant more maintenance and more headaches. The SD42 hit the sweet spot, enough grunt to be genuinely useful, simple enough to be genuinely reliable. That balance made it the industry standard for decades. Burlington Northern alone owned nearly 900 of them. And the design proved so sound that when railroads later needed to modernize older locomotives, they'd upgrade earlier engines to -2 specifications rather than start from scratch. Here's the wouldn't die part. A well-built SD42 doesn't get retired, it gets rebuilt. Across North America, these locomotives have been overhauled in kind, essentially given a second full life of another 30 to 40 years of hard freight work. Some have been re-engined. Most simply keep running on their original 645 power plants. They've worked in the United States, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and Guinea, and export versions spun off into designs for Britain, Yugoslavia, Iran, Pakistan, Morocco, Peru, and beyond. Half a century after the first one was built, thousands are still turning a wheel. Class I railroads still find it worth rebuilding them for frontline duty. It's a machine that beat its own maker's expectations and then quietly outlasted almost everything that was supposed to replace it. Number 7. The Pennsylvania Railroad GG1. Now for something electric and something beautiful. The GG1 was the Pennsylvania Railroad's masterpiece, a sleek, streamlined electric locomotive with a distinctive center cab, 5 pinstripes of gold, and a body whose graceful lines were refined by the legendary industrial designer Raymond Loewy, who swapped riveted construction for a smooth welded shell. The prototype, number 4800, was built in 1934 and quickly nicknamed Old Rivets. The first GG1 made its inaugural run on January 28, 1935. Under the wires of the Penzie's electrified corridor between New York and Washington, it was a revelation. 4,620 horsepower of continuous output, comfortable at 100 miles per hour, and equally happy dragging heavy freight. In total, 139 were built. But the reason it makes this list is a story that borders on the unbelievable. In 1953, GG1 number 4876 suffered an air brake failure as it approached Washington's Union Station. Unable to stop, the locomotive smashed into the station, plowed through the concourse, and crashed straight through the floor into the basement below. This was a locomotive weighing hundreds of thousands of pounds. It should have been a total loss. Instead, engineers cut the machine into 3 pieces, shipped it back to the Pennsylvania Railroad's Altoona shops, and reassembled it. That same locomotive returned to service and kept running for another 30 years. The GG1 as a class was just as stubborn. It outlived the very railroad that created it, passing through the Penn Central merger, then Conrail, then Amtrak, and finally New Jersey Transit. The last GG1 was retired in October 1983, nearly half a century after the design first appeared, an extraordinary lifespan for any locomotive and one of the longest in American history. 16 of them survive in museums today, Old Rivets among them. Number 6. The China Railways QJ. By the 1980s, most of the world had declared steam dead. China hadn't gotten the message. The China Railways QJ, the name comes from Qianjin, meaning advance or march forward, is a massive 210-2 heavy freight steam locomotive, and it holds a remarkable distinction. It was the very last mainline steam locomotive designed to go into mass production anywhere on Earth. Roughly 4,700 QJs were built, the bulk of them at the famous Datong Locomotive Works, with production continuing all the way to the end of 1988, a time when the rest of the planet was deep into diesels and bullet trains. That makes the QJ the most numerous steam class ever to run in China. These were the workhorses that hauled the freight of a rapidly industrializing nation up and down its main lines, and they refused to bow out on schedule. As diesels took over the national network through the 1990s, the QJs didn't all head for the scrapyard. Cash-strapped local railways and industrial operators realized they could buy several freshly overhauled QJs for the price of a single diesel, so the big engines got a second life. The national system officially ended steam around 2002, with a stubborn handful lingering into 2003. But the real last stand was the Jiaotong Railway across the grasslands of Inner Mongolia. This line, opened in 1995, was worked by around 100 QJs, and its crossing of the Jingpeng Pass became a place of pilgrimage. Photographers from around the world came to witness what was called the last great steam show on the planet. Mainline steam there survived until December 2005. Even then, the QJ wouldn't fully die. 3 of them were shipped to the United States. Numbers 6988 and 7081 went to the Iowa Interstate Railroad, and number 7040 to the R.J. Corman Railroad in Kentucky, where American crowds got to watch a Chinese giant that had once thundered through Mongolia. Number 5. The DRB Class 52 Kriegslock. This one has the darkest origin story on the list, and arguably the most astonishing survival. The DRB Class 52 was a 210 steam locomotive, a Kriegslokomotive, or war locomotive, mass-produced by Germany during the Second World War beginning in 1942. It was a deliberately stripped-down austerity version of the earlier Class 50, using fewer parts and cheaper materials so it could be churned out at terrifying speed to feed the German war machine, especially on the Eastern Front. Some were built with forced and slave labor, a grim fact that's part of this machine's history. Here's the irony that lands it on this list. The Class 52 was engineered to be almost disposable. The whole point was rapid, cheap production for a war that planners didn't expect to last long. Nobody designed it to survive for generations. More than 6,000 were built during the war alone, and the class ultimately numbered close to 7,000, making it one of the most produced locomotive types in history. When the war ended, these engines scattered across the continent as spoils and workhorses. The Soviet Union alone ended up with more than 2,100 of them. Poland ran them into the 1990s. Austria kept them going until 1976. Country after country found that this temporary wartime engine was simply too tough and too useful to throw away. And then there's the ending that almost defies belief. In the coal mining region around Tuzla, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, a small number of original Class 52 Kriegslocks are still in daily industrial service. As of 2024, around 5 of them were still steaming, hauling lignite from the mines to a thermal power plant over short distances. Machines built as throwaway tools of a catastrophic war, more than 80 years ago, are still doing an honest day's work. Almost nothing built to last has lasted this well. Number 4. The LNER Flying Scotsman. Some locomotives survive by being tough. Flying Scotsmen survived by being loved and by being rescued, again and again from the very edge of the scrapyard. Built at Doncaster in February 1923, it was one of Sir Nigel Gresley's elegant Pacific Express engines, later rebuilt to A3 specification. It carried the number 4472, and it was named after the famous London to Edinburgh Express it hauled. It earned its fame honestly. On 30 November 1934, Flying Scotsman became the first steam locomotive in the world to be officially authenticated at 100 miles per hour. It was a national celebrity before most people alive today were born, but celebrity doesn't save you from economics. By the early 1960s, the A3s were considered obsolete, swept aside by newer diesels. Flying Scotsman was withdrawn in January 1963, having covered more than 2 million miles. Incredibly, even the National Railway Museum of the day declined to save it, and every one of its sister A3 locomotives was cut up for scrap. This most famous engine in the world was days from the same fate. It was saved by an eccentric enthusiast named Alan Pegler, who bought it for its scrap value of around £3,000. But its troubles were far from over. Pegler took the locomotive on a grand tour of the United States and Canada, and then went bankrupt, leaving Flying Scotsman effectively stranded in America, at genuine risk of being seized and lost. A rescuer stepped in to bring it home. Later it toured Australia as well. Since then it has been rebuilt more times than almost any locomotive alive, including a marathon restoration by the National Railway Museum that ran to 4.5 million and finished in 2016. In 2023 it celebrated its centenary, 100 years old and still steaming under the Yorkshire sky. Written off, stranded abroad, and repeatedly worn out, it has cheated death so many times that it's become the very symbol of railway preservation. Number 3. The Union Pacific Big Boy number 4014. Some locomotives on this list never stopped running. This one came back from the dead. The Union Pacific Big Boy is a 4884 articulated steam locomotive, among the largest and heaviest steam engines ever built, a machine roughly 132 feet long and weighing well over 1 million pounds. Only 25 were ever constructed by the American Locomotive Company between 1941 and 1944 to haul enormous freight trains over the mountains of Wyoming and Utah. Number 4014 was built in 1941, and like almost all steam power, it met the diesel age and lost. It was retired from service in 1961, then donated to a museum in Pomona, California, where it sat, cold and static, on public display. For 58 years it went nowhere. Generations of visitors walked past a silent giant, and everyone assumed that was the end of the story. A big boy would never run again. Union Pacific decided otherwise. In 2013, the railroad reacquired 4014 from the museum, hauled it back to its steam shop in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and began one of the most ambitious restorations in railway history. Engineers converted it to burn fuel oil, rebuilt its enormous running gear, and painstakingly brought the sleeping colossus back to life. On May 4, 2019, Big Boy 4014 rolled out under its own power for the first time in decades, running from Cheyenne to Ogden to mark the 150th anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. The largest operating steam locomotive on the planet was, impossibly, alive again. It hasn't slowed down since. Number 4014 is now one of only 8 surviving Big Boys, and the only one in operation anywhere in the world. In 2026, it's booked for a coast-to-coast tour across America to help celebrate the nation's 250th birthday, greeting crowds who never dreamed they'd feel the ground shake beneath a running Big Boy. Number 2. The Union Pacific number 844. If Big Boy 4014 is the locomotive that came back to life, number 844 is the locomotive that never let go of it in the first place, and that gives it a claim no other machine in America can match. Built in 1944 by the American Locomotive Company, 844 is a 484 Northern from Union Pacific's FF series, a fast, powerful dual-purpose steam engine that could haul express passenger trains and fast freight alike. Union Pacific proudly bills it as the fastest of its steam fleet. Here's what makes it extraordinary. When Union Pacific finished with commercial steam in 1959, every one of 844's sister FF3 locomotives was scrapped. Number 844 was spared, first kept around for the humble job of experimental snow melting, and then, in 1960, retained deliberately for public relations and excursion work, and it has never left the roster since. That single decision made 844 the only steam locomotive never retired by a North American Class I railroad. Every other famous American steam engine you can name was withdrawn, scrapped, museum-bound, or later resurrected, not 844. It has stayed on Union Pacific's active books continuously since it was built, over 80 years and counting. There's even a charming quirk in its story. In 1962, Union Pacific took delivery of a new diesel that had also been numbered 844, so the steam engine was renumbered 8444 to avoid confusion. It carried that extra digit for 27 years. When the diesel was finally retired, the steam locomotive reclaimed its rightful identity in 1989, becoming plain old 844 once again. Nicknamed the Living Legend, it has run hundreds of thousands of miles as Union Pacific's ambassador, occasionally doubling up with Big Boy 4014 for the kind of spectacle that stops traffic for miles. It's one of the oldest locomotives still on any American Class I roster, a working piece of 1944 that simply never got the retirement notice. Number 1. The Fairy Queen, East Indian Railway number 22. And at number 1, a locomotive so old it makes everything else on this list look brand new. The Fairy Queen is a small 222 well-tanked steam engine, and it holds a Guinness World Record as the oldest steam locomotive in regular working service anywhere on Earth. Its date of manufacture is almost hard to process, 1855. Let that sink in. This locomotive was built by the firm of Kitson, Thompson and Hewitson in Leeds, England, then shipped by sea to Calcutta for the East Indian Railway, where it was given the number 22. It went into service when much of the modern world had not yet been invented. It worked passenger and freight trains for more than 50 years, and it even hauled troops during the upheaval of 1857. By around 1909, its long working life was over, and it settled into a quiet retirement, displayed outside a station, then used as a teaching aid at a railway training school. For decades it was, for all practical purposes, a museum piece. Then, in 1997, Indian Railways did something no one expected. They took this 140-year-old antique to the Paramba workshops in Chennai and restored it to full working order. not a replica, not a modern engine dressed up to look old. The actual 1855 machine steamed back to life. In 1998, it earned its Guinness certification, and it began pulling heritage tourist trains from Delhi out to Alwar in Rajasthan, near the Sariska Tiger Reserve. Today, cared for at the Rewari Railway Heritage Museum, the Fairy Queen is more than 170 years old and still capable of turning a wheel under its own steam on special heritage journeys. Think about that span. It was built before the American Civil War, before the telephone, before the light bulb. Empires have risen and fallen. Steam gave way to diesel, diesel to electric, and electric to high-speed rail. And through all of it, this tiny Victorian survivor has simply refused to become history. 10 machines, 10 stories of engines that were written off, worn out, crashed, stranded, mothballed, or flat out abandoned, and that came roaring back anyway. Because the best locomotives, it turns out, don't just move trains, they outlast the people who tried to retire them. So that's it for today. If you like this video, then please hit the like and subscribe button for more videos. Thanks for watching.